James, we are not picking up your audio right now. Can you hear me, James? We're not picking up your audio. While you're working on that, James, I'm going to go ahead and introduce the show, Moving Conversations with James Kern. James, can I hear you now?
I hope so.
There you go. There you go. All right, turning it back over to you. The beauty of live video and audio. Here we are. So
yes.
take it away, James. I'll get out of your way and let you do this.
No, thank you, Lyndon. James Kern here with Delicate Moving, your host of Moving Conversations here every Tuesday on the Difference Radio podcast. Welcome today. It's a beautiful day here in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. Not sure where everyone out there in our listening and viewing audience is from, but we've got beautiful weather here today, and excited that you've joined us. I want to welcome in now our weekly co-hosts, Darren and April Mabrey. Here they come. Great. All right. Welcome, Darren and April.
Hey, guys.
How you doing?
Hey. Man, I tell you what, we've pulled it together with all these technical difficulties.
We did. Today was a day.
I'm telling you. So it's going to be quite interesting since we're talking about fear today, because I was having fear that we weren't going to have a show. Or that really my biggest fear is that I was going to be responsible for all the content today.
There's that shooting coming in.
There it is. Is there any fear of you wearing that hat? Do you have any fear with that hat?
No, I thought about that. There is no more fear. There's no fear anymore because they're at the bottom, right? So we can't go any lower. So these doggone Dallas Cowboys.
That whole division is just
it's a dumpster fire full of trash. There's nothing salvageable in the dumpster. But I will say that had you guys not been able to join us, it was going to be a full hour of just talking trash about the Cowboys. So anyway, I'm good at that. So that's the one thing I am good at. But welcome. How are you guys doing today?
We're doing awesome. I would like to point out for all those tens of thousands of people following the show, that you do notice we got the wall done.
We did.
Oh, you do have it done. Okay.
We were better rested. We had a snack. We were
like
prepared.
Toddlers. You have to have a snack for you.
We're not hangry. And yeah, I think we did these last two strips. It took us almost as long as it did to do the rest.
Anyway,
it's done.
That's typical, but I won't bring everyone into your home. I'll just leave a comment there. How's the rib, April?
Oh man, so crazy. It's all right. I broke a rib or two doing something stupid.
And then what did you do? And what did you do on Sunday?
Yeah. See, you guys are gonna mess around with me. I went to Six Flags.
So
for my children.
So how did you break your rib? Were you like pulling someone from a burning car?
I wish that would have been so good. No, I fell over a fence.
Nope.
Post.
Nope. That's not what you were doing. You were reaching over a fence rail to get a bag of candy from a group of kids that were about to spill it all.
And then I jumped and thought I could jump up and jump back really fast.
You couldn't reach it. So you're trying to.
Yeah.
At a football game, right?
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
A football.
Yeah. The cheerleaders were throwing candy, and a bunch of little rugrats were down by them. And so to alleviate the rugrats reaching through the fence trying to grab candy, April said, "Just give me the bag."
Yeah. So
and then she couldn't reach, just jumped and then landed on the
saving a $5 bag of candy cost me about $120, and medical bills and prescriptions.
It was actually $15 for that bag of candy, just so you know.
And
Okay.
so basically, if we talked about a broken rib at a football game, we would assume it was somebody with a helmet on and shoulder pads, but instead it was the cheerleader sponsor. Okay, got it.
Yep.
That's the way you roll, April. I like
It is. I'm feeling so much better though now, man.
And
that
then
first
you went
week
to
was
Six
rough.
Flags, which is what, as Darren pointed out on Sunday and at our Bible fellowship class, that's what eyes do with broken ribs.
It is what eyes do. And you know what? My S shading was also involved because I had promised the girls like a month ago that we were going to go on that day. And then I was like, I don't know, you guys. They're like, it's okay, mommy. And then that just made it worse.
Her parting words were, I may ride a ride. I may.
Right.
So they rode 14 rides. April was on, I think, 12 of them.
In 6 hours.
Right. With the pass. You had to get the
We
pass.
bought a fast pass. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. I bought the fast pass. Because I was like, listen, we can't come here and ride like 3 rides.
So one day at Six Flags was only $1,200. So it's pretty. Awesome.
But you have to divide that per ride, like per kid. So that's like about $7 a ride.
Yeah, that's the way. That's when anything's expensive. That's the way April. She automatically starts doing the division of math.
I go into my C brain
Yeah.
and start. Yeah,
All right, so that's
Well, it
sure
took your mind off the
$500, but
broken
per
ribs.
wear,
right.
it's only $20.
Right.
So that
Anyway,
makes no
thank you for asking, James. I am feeling.
Yes. I was
But that's not
concerned.
why we gathered here.
Well, awesome. Well, that's just a small glimpse. That would just be you breaking your rib, leaning over a fence as a cheerleader sponsor. I mean, is that not typical of 2020?
Yep, it is.
Yeah. And so with that 2020 there, that reference, I mean, we're living in a world right now where it's upside down in a lot of ways. What is up is now down. What was right is now left, and so on and so forth. But that's kind of where we want to go today. We want to talk about, we've been talking about DISC for all of you out there who are familiar with the DISC assessment, DISC. That's 4 different styles of personalities and behavior. And so we've been talking about that and talking about the various styles and how they interact with one another, the healthy and unhealthy side of each style, and how those impact your daily living. And so given that we are in the month of October, Halloween, no, just kidding. That really wasn't an impact. That really didn't influence our decision today to talk about fear. But given the world we're living in, so many things have been going on in 2020. We live in a COVID world now. We've got an election around the corner. We thought that we should talk about our emotions today and focus on fear. But Darren, would you like to kind of, for our audience and really a refresher course for me as well, kind of go over maybe what the 8 basic emotions are before we laser focus in on fear?
Yeah. So, I guess some setup around this. So inside of our class that James and his wife are part of, we've been covering several topics. It centers around marriages and relationships and communicating, which is why we can transition a lot of those conversations over to the show. But one of the things that we began walking through, and the great COVID interrupted, and we will finish, is emotions and feelings. And let me start off by saying that as a backdrop to emotions and feelings, these are really, really key. I think they're so important is because they drive so much of our behavior. We are taught very little about them to understand them. We have no clue how to interpret them and use them and understand them. And yet they end up absolutely the negative or inability to understand them and to know what they're about, and correctly have them guide us ends up, I think, just trashing so much of our life and our relationships. Anyway, so that kind of just a real quick thing on feelings and emotions. I guess what I would say is this, James, you've heard in class, I cannot overestimate or emphasize, maybe is the best way to say it, how important understanding all of emotions and stuff is. Because if you break down any relationship, any issues going on in a relationship, you're going to find out that the feelings and emotions and all that stuff and the inability to interact with all that is driving almost the whole relationship. So with that said, what we covered in class was that there's not a million feelings, emotions. There's kind of subcategories, but the big ones are, we'll cover them real quick, is anger, sad, hurt, fear, loneliness, shame, guilt, and glad. And we'll talk about fear today and how that kind of impacts us. But one of the things that we should say about those feelings is initially when people hear them, they say, well, shoot, all of them are negative. And except one, glad being the one. But what's really, really important to understand is that none of these are negative. They are all very, very important to understand. They've all have been God-given, and it wasn't just an accident that we have them.
Do you know what I'm glad about? I'd be glad to hear about Jeff Jacobs.
See, that's funny you said that, because I'm thinking this whole thing about fear with all the real estate that is changing hands right now. If I were listing a home, I would be scared to death that I wasn't getting top dollar for my house, or that I might be asking too much, or that I might be selling my home to the wrong buyer when there might be someone else that would come along and offer me more money. So with that being said, I can't recommend strongly enough Jeff Jacobs and his team over at Realty Town. Let me tell you a little bit about Jeff and his team. They've got over 125 years total team experience in real estate. The Realty Town team at Keller Williams Frisco, right there on Preston Road, has the experience you need for success results in the world of real estate, specializing in residential real estate, helping buyers and sellers with their home needs. Jeff and his team at Realty Town also helps their clients in the commercial arena. Need help selling a restaurant space? Maybe COVID has shut your space down, or you've lost a tenant. Jeff and his team have the experience and can help you do that. Have an apartment complex you need to sell? No problem. Jeff and his team have the experience you're looking for. Has the COVID pandemic made you rethink your commercial leasing situation? Jeff and his team have years of experience helping business owners and property owners in commercial leasing. So give them a call. Backed by an exceptional support team of professionals, they are absolutely dedicated to stellar service and making your happy place happen. Contact Jeff Jacobs at 972-978-6539 for any need in real estate. And if interested in becoming a realtor, he would be happy to visit with you. He takes the fear out of buying and selling real estate. Thank you for that intro there, April. I know Jeff is listening to our show and appreciates that.
Absolutely.
Keeping you on track. Okay, so one other thing, James, as we talk about feelings, of the 8 I talked about, so anything else that you might think of as a feeling is probably a synonym, a subcategory of the 8 that we just read. Or they are what might be called a condition of the heart. So let's just say I'm depressed. Well, depressed isn't a feeling. It has feelings associated, but really depression or depressed is actually kind of a state of the heart, a state of kind of your emotional well-being, okay? So the other thing to kind of set us up to have this conversation is that with each of the feelings, some people have kind of described it like this, which I think is super helpful, is that with your feeling, the feelings should produce something positive in our life, okay? And a lot of people have called this the giftedness of that feeling, okay? So when we see a feeling or we experience a feeling, something positive should happen in our life. To get that positiveness of that feeling, it typically takes a lot of intention. Okay, so we talk in our class about, the willingness, the patience, the work, and the time that you add all those up, that equals the giftedness. Mm-hmm. You have to have a willingness of being intentional about understanding it. You have to have the patience in the situation to kind of let that feeling, not try to shut down the feeling, but just have patience. You have to usually do work around it in your life, and it usually takes time. But if you do all of those, the math adds up to that's what creates the giftedness. Now, the other
So
side.
one more thing, real quick, Darren, because I think that's huge because we referenced that many weeks in a row. So just real quick, without going into the explanation, just say the addition there, what all adds up to equal the giftedness for anyone that wasn't ready for that, because I think it's very important.
Yeah, it's willingness plus patience plus work plus time.
Got it. And all of those are equally important, probably, right?
They are. And
yeah.
The other side of that, which there is no formula because it's free off the shelf. I think the best way to describe it that I've heard is for it to be labeled an impairment. Okay, so when we experience a feeling, if we don't handle that appropriately, an impairment kicks in. There's a negative side to that emotion, and that's what ends up crippling us. Okay, and they all have gifted impairment, but let's drill down to fear because that's what we wanted to talk about today. Okay,
yeah.
So and these kind of sound weird at first blush, but the giftedness of fear is actually faith and wisdom. And I would really put the highlight on the word wisdom. The impairment of fear is actually anxiety. And anxiety and fear are very, very different. So with that said, let's say it this way. What is fear supposed to do? Okay, because we all experience fear. But what fear is supposed to do, it is to awaken us to physical, emotional, or even spiritual danger. All right. So a lot of it is real easy to see, like you're walking down a pathway and all of a sudden a bear jumps out. All right. I mean, we're all going to feel fearful there, right? That is innate in us. So when we talk about the feelings, like we talked in class, I like to think of them as kind of a dashboard in life that is supposed to be giving us signals to help us understand the world around us. And the thing that fear does is it is the warning light that tells you that you are potentially about to experience physical, emotional, or spiritual danger. Okay. What fear is supposed to bring about is strength. Now that sounds weird. So I'll allow you in April to guys talk about here who I want to bring in that great theologian right now. James in April. I mean, who do we talk about in class is the greatest theologian ever?
George Costanza.
Yeah, so the reason we talk George Costanza is because of that classic episode of Seinfeld where he realizes that every decision he's ever made in life is wrong, and if he does the exact opposite of what he kind of defaults to, then in his thinking, then that every decision he would make in the future then would be right. So he decides to do that. Instead of lying about his occupation, he says, "Hey, I'm a fat bald guy. I live at home and I don't have a job." And the first woman he says it to wants to go out with him. He gets a job with the New York Yankees. So the reason I bring that up is because when we think about these feelings, our natural tendencies tend to be exactly opposite of what we should do. So when we feel fear, what we should be doing is it should awaken us to our neediness and our vulnerability. What we typically do is we try to isolate and hide away from that, and we do other things like we get rageful, overprotective, over controlling, all of those things, and we try to control the fear. And the problem is you can never get enough control.
I think they're trying to control the vulnerability.
No, that's exactly what it is.
I don't even know that they're trying to control the fear. I think that feeling vulnerable is where it starts to get squishy, and people don't like that feeling, especially D's, high D's. Well, none of the styles do. Vulnerability is a big one. And so fear should awaken you to danger, which says you're vulnerable to be hurt in this situation. And then we feel that vulnerability and we don't like that. And then we numb it out, even though the danger is still there.
Yeah, it's like in Top Gun or in a movie where you've seen the lights start going off in the airplane and they eject when they hear those loud noises. They just, we eject. We just try to get out of the situation rather than dealing with it. I like how you've said it before to me is when certain things start to touch certain areas in my life or someone's life, we get to get, what do you say? We get wobbly in that area, or we're kind of wobbly there.
Yeah. Yeah.
You explain that, kind of how you've said that before?
Well, especially as we talk about shading, right? So for you and I, we both have S shading. And when somebody starts, like for me, I'm really sensitive about my children or people that I love, like my mom, my children, my husband. And so
I was third
okay,
on that
whatever.
list, just
Come
so
on,
you know.
know.
I don't know
Everyone
if you guys were counting, but she listed her mom and the kids,
Darren, and then okay. And so when things start happening or I get fearful about any of that, that makes me feel vulnerable because I can't protect them. I can protect myself, but I can't protect them. And that's where I'm wobbly. Because there's nothing, I'm super vulnerable because it's outside of me. Does that make sense? And so, and I'm not very practiced as an S. That's not my main letter. And so where I begin to feel insecure, unsafe, unstable, things are going too fast, like all those S traits, when those start to get wobbly or when something starts to happen, I don't really know how to perform in that space anyway. And so then that's when I get panicky. So I pull the ripcord. The I in me starts to get impulsive and I can get really out of control about that because I'm not very practiced. But I think for other people, it's probably other things.
Well, and I think that's why it's important to understand what fear is doing. Fear is telling you about worth, right? It's so when a bear comes up, I mean, what's the worst you can do is kill you. Well, you don't want to die. Why? Because you have self-worth. There's worth. So fear, it is talking about something that you value to you. Okay. So let's just say you're going to start a new business adventure. You're going to start a new whatever. Okay. The first thing you're going to automatically feel is fear. Okay. Because when you try some of this stuff, think about the things that you're about to, bring into play. You're about to bring into play rejection, failure, humiliation, pain, disappointment. All of these things are now possible. And part of what it takes to get over fear is to understand that this world is a very horrible place and there is real hurt. So there is a chance that you could get hurt. And if you don't believe that you can live to tell the tale of hurt, then the fear will absolutely lock you down. So what a lot of people end up doing is they end up trying to manage the world around them because fear's got them locked into anxiety. Remember we talked about that the impairment? They move into anxiety and now they're in trouble.
Well, the anxiety is worrying about something that isn't there.
That's the difference. And that's what I want to tell. Yeah, go ahead, Darren.
Well, I was going to say it's that. It is two things. It is trying to worry about stuff that's not even real. And it's trying to stop things that have already happened before. So it might not even be that it's not real. It's just that it hasn't happened yet.
Right.
So you can just live in anxiety that you're going to die. Well, that's not a way to live.
Yeah, I've got a personal testimony from that just happened yesterday, and I wasn't even thinking about this until just like 30 seconds ago because I am a D and I'm listening to y'all, but I'm also like thinking about 100 other things, right? But before I share with you my little personal testimony about fear and anxiety, let me tell to all the people out there that Darren just mentioned who might be wanting to start their own business and they're wondering, how can I build my brand? How can I reach people and share with them what I want to do as an entrepreneur? And that would be the difference. You're hearing us right now. You're seeing us right now on The Difference. We are a digital video branding and broadcast media company that helps small business owners just like me create and produce their own unique radio, live stream, and podcast shows. There are many opportunities and lots of ways you can benefit from partnering with The Difference, whether it's advertising to our ever-growing audience of thousands, sponsoring our shows, being involved on our shows as a contributor, co-host, or ultimately creating your own show that you can use to grow your business. With The Difference, you have many options available to build your audience, brand familiarity, and increase your traffic. Follow, subscribe, and watch our shows on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at The Difference Radio live stream and podcast. Listen to our shows on Pandora, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple, Google Play, Anchor, and Bullhorn at The Difference Radio live stream and podcast. For more info, call Lyndon Wilson at 972-866-4596 or email us at lyndonw@thedifferenceradio.com. So Darren left. Awesome.
Exactly.
There he is. See, if he's not talking, he's like, I'm out. It's typical D, right?
Exactly.
But no, so yesterday.
Oh yeah. Tell you
go.
Yeah.
So,
Sorry,
we're talking about Darren now.
commercial break. I thought.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So yesterday, Jackson, my 8th grader, had his first middle school football game first 8th grade game yesterday. And he hurt his knee a couple of weeks ago, and Jackson is a very dedicated, disciplined. I mean, throughout COVID, throughout the summer, he was in bed every night at 10:30. He has been very dedicated to his physical health, preparing for the football season. I wouldn't say it's his identity, but he is very motivated to be the best football player he can be. And he hurt his knee a couple of weeks ago, innocently kicking a football. He hyperextended it and got a bone bruise. And all I could think about it is, as his parent, was, I hate to see all this hard work go to waste this year. And now he's going to miss part of the football season or all of the football season if this is a bad injury. So fear began to set in, anxiety. And yesterday he was ready to play, cleared to play. We were getting ready to go to the game. And I just was having unhealthy thoughts of, man, I just hope Jackson doesn't get hurt. And I just, I was kind of on that loop. And it just hit me that, everything that Jackson does, and especially when he's doing this it's in good faith. He's not making bad decisions. He's not being rebellious. He's playing football. He's trying to use his skill set that God's blessed him with to go out and play football. So I thought, this is part of God's plan. And as a parent, which were a lot of my fears, I find fear in as being a parent. And I'm sure you can relate to that, April and Darren, and our listeners can, who are parents. I just said, you know what, this is part of God's plan. And unfortunately, from where I sit, it wouldn't look good if Jackson got hurt. But if he does, God's going to be glorified in this. And we're just going to trust God, and we're going to have faith. And I'm not going to be so gripped by fear that I can't enjoy watching Jackson play a football game tonight, because I'm going to be so stressed out that I won't even get to enjoy all the work he's put in and getting to watch him play a football game. So that's my little example there of where I was, taken over by the impairment side. And fortunately, that voice in me, the Holy Spirit, whatever you want to, say, caused me to start thinking the right way about it. And that's what my fear drove me into, was faith and wisdom.
Well, yeah. And, the Bible says, take every thought captive.
Yeah.
And I think that, one of the questions that just came in that I saw come across, it said, do we fear the unknown? And I think when we talk about real fear, we're fearing, it's that feeling of what's under the bed, what's in the closet, what's in the basement. It's sometimes we fear what we're in, but most of the time fear is around the unknown and the what ifs. And I think that's why that scripture is so important, is just to be able to say, you know what? And there's another one. Don't worry about tomorrow. Today has enough problems of its own. Let's just be kind of in the moment where we're at right now. The girls are cheerleaders. This is their first year, and they have to hold that banner where the football players run through it. You know what I mean? And they'd never done that before. They didn't know what that was about. So they're all standing there, and I'm like, just don't die. Just don't die. I don't want any crazy stuff. And so it's the same thing of there's 10 of them. I mean, they should be able to hold it, but I don't know. And what if the boys come barreling through there and take everybody down? And, you play out these scenarios. I mean, how many of us sit and play out these scenarios in our mind that don't even exist?
Mhm.
And,
Well, I think that,
trying
okay,
to control it.
that's why it's important to that's why it's so important to understand, what is fear trying to tell me? Okay, so fear is trying to tell us that we are needy and we are vulnerable. And those are things, like we said in our class, James, you remember when I asked everybody, how would you describe yourself as needy? And no one raised their hand. Why not? Well, because in our culture, being needy sounds negative. Okay, that's not the reality of who you and I are. We are very, very needy creatures. So what it's supposed to do is expose our neediness. It is supposed to help us reach out to others who can fill that gap with us and alongside us, to collaborate. Okay, when we move into the impairment, and that's wisdom. That's wisdom. So what fear should do is, let's take an example, a real example. Let's go to D-Day. Okay, these guys knew that they were about to just try something crazy. Okay, so what drove them to, they are needy. I'm not prepared. We got to have a plan. We've got to be intentional. We've got to mitigate risk as much as we can, but that's all we can do. So what that then did was drive them to preparation. It drove them to understand, what can I control, what I can't control.
I think that's where people can really get into what we call nowadays, anxiety, right? Like, I have anxiety. Well, first of all, you're probably drinking a lot of coffee, number one. Number two is, I think what happens is we go, okay, if I do all these things and I mitigate all this risk and I check this box, and I make sure that my kid's wrapped in bubble wrap and they have a mask and they, and all these things, and I follow all of this prescription, then I won't have this happen to me. If he's like, for Jackson's fit and he's eating and we've done everything and he's practiced and he's done everything he's supposed to do, then he knows how to play, do the plays and get out of the way, then he's going to be safe. Right. And so what that does is it kind of like, it sends us into this place of over preparation, over controlling, over thinking. And so I think you can go one way, or you can really dip down into that, and then you're just consumed with trying to prepare.
Well, but
we want what we want. I want Jackson to reap the rewards of hard work and to have joy and happiness, and to get to fulfill his dreams one day of, playing college football, right? So the thought of anything interrupting that or getting in the way of that, causes anxiety. And so rather than saying, whatever God's plan is for Jackson, that's what's going to happen. And I can't interrupt that. Jackson's not going to screw that up, because God's going to work it all out. And so, that's why I guess my life verse, if that's such a thing, I hear that word life verse a lot. But one of my favorite verses is Romans 8:28. All things work together for good for those who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. And so I have to remind myself of that all the time, because I'm trying to control outcomes.
Right.
And
Well, we try to control God too, right? Like, we go,
right.
because he's like, I know the plans I have for you, and they're to prosper you and not to harm you.
Yes.
And sometimes when we have our earthly father and our heavenly father twisted, we think that God is out to harm us, or, well, this happened to my kid because I didn't do XYZ when I was a kid. Or we start to play those games in our mind. And that's because we don't know that God is really good. And we try to set this up where if I do all these things, then God's going to bless me and make sure that everything is good and the wheels are on my wagon. And I think we make God too human when we do that.
Well, we have a question here that was just posed to us by our producer, Lyndon. Hope Lyndon's doing good back there behind the scenes. Stay there, Lyndon. We don't want you on camera. No, I'm just kidding. But Lyndon basically posed a question that was talking about gaining more knowledge of the situation and understanding of our situation. And will that sometimes help in reducing fear? And I know there's, and you guys know who, probably some people like this, but there are people in marriages right now that are in some terrible situations, and their fears about maybe what will happen to their children or what
Oh,
will
yeah.
happen to the home that they live
Or that.
in, or them, if they set up boundaries, if they take a stand for righteousness, if they protect themselves, the fear of the unknown, what is going to happen?
Mhm.
And so I think that we do need information. We do need knowledge. There is a certain faith aspect to fear. At some point, we are going to have to trust. Um, and if you are a Bible believing Christian and you believe in the God that we believe in, then that's going to require you to trust in God. But knowledge is helpful. It is important. You should not just believe what you've seen on TV or believe what you've heard has happened to your friends about COVID, for instance, or hasn't happened. You need to get educated. And I think we should all do that, even like starting a business. If you think, well, there's no way I can afford health insurance if I start my own business. Well, have you actually looked into that to see what health insurance might cost you? Do you know what the market is for the business you want to start? So I think knowledge is important.
It is, and again, what's the giftedness of it's wisdom.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
wisdom, in order for any of us to live a full life, to live a rewarding life, we have to have wisdom. We have to be able to discern, have discernment. The opposite side of that impairment is anxiety, which is now you're focused on the dread and the anticipation of something awful
And the unknown.
which may or may not happen, or you're trying to now control the hurt that happened to you one time. I never want that to happen again. So now you're allowing that to control you rather than what can I do? Where can I gain strength and wisdom? It starts by realizing you're needy. You're a needy person, not denying your vulnerability, but acknowledging it.
Yes.
Yeah. I guess what?
I think there's a self-awareness that's important to this.
Yeah, because if you don't, I mean, look, you're going across let me tell you, here's a quick story of how it can get jacked up. A little kid walking into a room with you. One writers write this story I think is helpful. Here's what happens. A little kid instinctively will walk into a dark room with an adult, and that little kid will do what? They'll reach out to hold your hand. Okay? If that, because they feel fear. Okay? So if they get kind of shouted or shamed down, that fear is a negative thing, then they get kind of left in the world groping through the dark. And now all of a sudden, what they create anxiety around is darkness. That was never the original problem. What was the original innate problem?
They were alone.
They weren't afraid of the dark. They were afraid of being alone in the dark.
Mm-hmm.
And now what hasn't happened is now the impairment has shifted. That now I don't want to be alone. Once again, what is fear supposed to do? It is supposed to expose our neediness, and we reach out to others, which is exactly what that little kid did, reaching out for your hand.
And I
It's
think
supposed to move us. It's supposed to move us. Not, no pun intended, but it's really supposed to move us from our impairment or from our being still, being frozen, and to the gifted side.
Well, it's supposed to push us to expose our need.
Right.
So exposing our need, when that little kid is reaching up for the hand, he's exposing his need. Where are you? Where are you?
Yeah.
Right. And I think that we don't want to expose that we're needy. We don't want to expose that we're vulnerable. We don't want to expose that we're, quote, weak, whatever that might feel inside of us. And I think there's two people we need to reach out to. Number one is God, that should drive us to him, number one, but it also should drive us to the body of Christ. So, Lyndon actually wrote, when you're pursuing awareness, so I want to be aware that I feel fearful here myself. I want to acknowledge it to myself, which is the hardest thing to do. I want to get some knowledge around what the problem is. And I need someone to help me be confident. And so you may need other people around you cheering you on, telling you the truth because sometimes we'll lie to ourselves. And so I think that we have to expose ourselves, and that's the problem. And what we do is we say, I'm going to keep that to myself, and I'm just going to have a drink, have a couple glasses of wine. I think I'll just go and work out. I think I'll just, there's a lot of things that we do to push that down or ignore it for that time when we really should be exposing it.
Well,
Yeah.
okay. So on
Tana,
that,
real quick, I was going to say, Tana, I'd like to recognize some of our listeners out there.
Yeah,
Tana Tibbs there on our Facebook Live there. She says that sometimes you can have the knowledge. So we've gotten the knowledge, we've gotten the awareness, but the anxiety can come from not doing what we know we need to do with that knowledge, and
right.
that can create anxiety within us because we still have fears that are unresolved or unaddressed. That, the old saying of, until your current situation, the fear of your current situation or the strain of your current situation becomes worse than the fear of not doing something, you won't move out of that situation.
right. Well, and here's what's really weird in Tanya. There's a lot going on with what she said. Okay. But the reason fear isn't actually a movement feeling. Okay. The movement feeling, which is a very, very good feeling, is anger. Okay. Why does it? She's right. The anxiety begins to keep us from moving. But the reason is that it does that is because we should be driven to an anger. And that's a whole other feeling. And you have to trust me that there is anger is actually a very good, maybe the most important feeling we have. The problem is rather than tapping into anger and doing the gifted side of anger, what happens is we substitute it with rage. And when you just end up raging, that keeps you from the actual movement. So the anxiety moved you rather than to anger. You covered up with rage because here's why. Our fear, when we get wounded, okay, let's think about just an emotional wound for 5 seconds. Okay. When we get emotionally wounded, we misinterpret something. We say, I got wounded because I became vulnerable. And when I let my guard down, that's when I got hurt. I opened myself up to the possibility of getting hurt. And the reason I did is because I lost control. So back the train up. If I have control, that will reduce my ability to be vulnerable, and I ain't going to get hurt again. So that's kind of the natural flow in the impairment side. So now guess what we try to do? Now, to mitigate fear, we try to control it. And one of the ways we can control it is rage. I mean, how many times have we all?
Yeah, rage and anxiety are like evil twin sisters.
They are. And let's be clear,
connected.
Rage and anger, aren't those kind of close? They're not even remotely close.
We'll probably talk about anger.
Yeah, we can go into detail about this later, but anger and rage are absolute polar opposites. They're not even close
But
to
rage and anxiety are connected.
we think. Anyway, James, I mean, my point is that we kind of equate them together because we're not taught how to interpret right. So we think, he got scared and he freaked out and just started going nuts. Well, that's a typical response. No, it's not.
Well, let's real quick talk about something that can cause real anxiety from a fear, and that would be, what if you own a home out there and you want to rent that property out, but you're afraid that collecting rent or handling the repairs that might be needed or finding a tenant would just be more than you could handle. We've got a solution for you, and that solution is Real Property Management. Brian Poduska over there at Real Property Management Focus. They are a full-service property management firm specializing in residential, single-family, and multifamily investment properties. Their ideal client ranges anywhere from the intentional investor with multiple properties to the accidental landlord who may have inherited a home or is looking to monetize their starter home as a wealth-building tool. Our services include extensive property marketing, thorough tenant location and screening, timely rent collection routine, emergency and preventative maintenance, eviction if necessary, and most importantly, offering peace of mind to the investor that their assets are being cared for and managed properly. Check out Real Property Management Focus. Give Brian Poduska a call at 469-820-0088 or look us up online at www.realpmfocus.com, because we are Real Property Management Focus, where we focus on your real estate investments.
Awesome.
Okay. So back to what you were saying, Darren.
Well, so I see a couple of other things. So one of the things that fear is supposed to do is to bring about discernment. Discernment is the ability to be able to judge something truthfully, not keep you safe. Okay. So the impairment side of all the feelings, it is trying to squash the feeling. You don't want to, quote unquote, sit in the feeling. You don't want to feel it. Because we see them as negative, like being sad. Like, I don't want to be sad or lonely. Like,
Especially eyes.
I don't want to be lonely. I don't want to feel hurt. Right. And that's why a lot of times we'll see these or understand these as negatively. Okay. But one of the things that I think is really, really important is let's kind of talk about, how do you do it right? Okay. Because there's lots of ways we go the wrong way. We don't look to grow in discernment and wisdom. We substitute what fear should be driving us to with anxiety, which takes us down the wrong road. Another thing we do is we start making judgments, right? We try to devalue whatever it is. Remember, we said fear is supposed to bring up the value. Well, hey, who cares, man? I don't care about that job anyway. They're a bunch of idiots, right? We devalue it and we rage out and we start making judgments about people and circumstances, okay? So if that's how we shouldn't do it, how should we do it? Well, here's just a kind of a quick list of things you can do. Number one, when you start to feel fear, rather than trying to block it, rather than trying to squash it and shut that voice down in your life, you can realize, okay, I have an alarm going off here on my dashboard. So what is that telling me? So I think then we can start asking our questions. We can ask ourselves questions. What is it that I fear? So back to the little boy. Do I fear darkness, or do I fear being alone in the dark? Like someone goes to Six Flags with a broken rib, and they don't want to ride whatever ride. Well, why do they not? Is it do you really believe you're going to come flying off that thing and die, or is it you don't like giving up control? Right? Those are different reasons. So number one is, what do I fear? I think you need to ask yourselves, what am I afraid is going to happen? Can I control that? What can I do about it? Why am I afraid to get in that boat and go across the English Channel? Why? Well, because I might get a bullet in the head. Okay. What can you do to try to mitigate that risk? How do you prepare? How do you gain the knowledge and then and that kind of thing, right? It's supposed to, we should be asking ourselves, what is this fear telling me that I lack? Who can help me? So back to you, James Jackson gets in a football game. He's a quarterback. What position does he play?
He's a tight end and a linebacker.
Okay, I'm a tight end. I'm scared. What? I'm going to drop the ball.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be wide open, and I'm going to be a laughing stock. See, now all of a sudden we can start addressing what he's afraid of, and we can start equipping him to reduce that fear. Okay. And guess what, Jackson, here's the reality. You may be open and you may get a pass right in the numbers, and you may start turning upfield before you grab it, and you may drop it, and the crowd may boo you, and all of those things are possible, right? That's part of the game.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's real, and that's part of controlling the mind and actually having that faith. I mean, at some points you have to give up control, and I think control. You say that a lot, April. I mean, and I don't know if that's because you struggle with that or what, but control. And you guys, we've talked about it before. Even controlling how we're perceived or
Yeah.
people's opinions of us, because that's driven by fear as well. What fear of rejection or fear of not being accepted? All those things control us or impact us. And so, yeah, fear is a big thing. And I mean, even with the election, and we won't get on, the Republican side, the Democrat side, Biden, Trump, but I think everyone that's voting or everyone that's concerned about this election, part of the reason they're voting for their candidate could boil down to some fears, right? And I think for me, I just have to vote the way that I believe I should vote. But at the end of the day, I've got to say that God is sovereign, and that no matter what happens, this is in God's hands. And I can't just shut my life down and quit raising my kids and move to another country or pull them out of school and prepare for end times because my candidate loses, and vice versa. I can't, if my candidate wins,
you can.
say, well, I can, but that's not
Right,
faith and wisdom.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not. And
It's not
the
healthy.
thing is that, God's word says that he places the kings.
Yes.
And whether that's, Biden or Trump or whoever it is, that's where it is. And we're part of that world. I think, you can kind of go around the horn. I think part of the thing you wanted to talk about was what each style kind of feared,
Mm-hmm.
what the core fear is. And so with D's, a lot of it, the main fear is failure. And so when I talk to D's, that's why I say control, because they're trying to control the outcome to a win, whatever that might be, right? And so whatever that win is to them, they're constantly trying to control it to that outcome. So the win or the lose, actually, it's really what I just call failure, because it may or may not be winning, but it's just failure at whatever they say that they want to do. They don't like failure at all. It could be failure of a marriage, it could be failure of a business, it could be failure of not getting what they had their goal set. Like, it could be a million things. For the eyes, it's a fear of rejection. And so they're constantly trying to control perceptions, which you kind of touched on earlier. I want to control what you think of me. I want to control what you think I think. I want to control, because if I can control all of that, then I'll be accepted. If I can control catching the ball when it's thrown to me, then I'll be accepted and people think I'm cool or whatever it might be, right? So there's some acceptance rejection. On the S, it's the fear of not being needed. And so that's kind of a weird thing. It's kind of an upside down version of pride almost. It's just that I want you to be happy, but I want it to be because of me. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So I want to meet your needs. I want to be sure that I'm there for you. I don't want to let you down. And so sometimes in the past, I would say the fear is like letting somebody down. But the more I've thought about that and drilled into it, the more I realize it's a need to be needed. So it still comes from that kind of fleshly place. So I want you to be happy, and I'm so excited, and I'm really focused on that. But I want to be sure that it's because of something that I've done. And so if that need isn't being met in me, I'll control that for sure. And then on the C side is real clear. I'm fearful of being wrong, and they will control their entire world to ensure their correctness. So really, it's those four main roots that, and you may have three, right? Like me and you, we have three, James.
Right.
So we're afraid of a lot of stuff, but
Right.
but oftentimes I wish for just one letter so that I could just be afraid of one thing. So that's kind of, if you can delve into that and think, man, why am I really afraid right now? Oh, it's because I feel like I might be wrong. I don't want to take that risk because what if I'm wrong? I don't want to start that.
Well, what would
job
happen then? Yeah, then I'd say, okay, so what's going to happen?
Right. Get to the end of that. So what happens if you drop the ball and everybody's watching and they all go, ooh, you hear the whole crowd.
Yeah.
And then next Monday at school, they're like, dude, you dropped that ball. We could have totally won. What's going to happen? Let's walk through that. And I think that's what he was, Legend was talking about before, getting the knowledge and being prepared for what you're going to do in that position, if that happens, and then moving forward. So like, what happens if my kid gets hurt on the field in football? Well, I'm going to go pick him up. And we're going to put him in the ambulance.
Well, you can't,
We're gonna go.
but the
Yeah.
reality is this: in our vulnerability and our neediness, you can't control whether Jackson gets his leg broke tomorrow or not.
No.
There's
Exactly.
nothing you can do. I mean, you certainly he can get big and as strong and as durable as possible, right? He can do that. But at the end of the day, he can't. The world's a trap. I mean, sometimes you're the starting quarterback and the ball snapped, and all you got to do is hold it so a guy can kick it, and that ball goes squirting out of your hands. James, remember that? Tony Romo?
Yes. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, and all of us as parents, I mean, we may have craziness going on around us in our businesses, even in our marriage, whatever, in our family. But if our kids are enjoying life and they're successful and they're having a good time, man, that's some medicine right there. I mean, can you guys relate to that, right?
Well, me and you
So-
can. We have that S shading. But yes, I
Yeah.
think all parents are
Yeah.
very focused on making sure their kids are okay.
But
yeah.
And
but
so when they're doing well, you're feeling good. But when your kid's struggling, it's like, man, I mean, I'll be honest, when Jackson hurt his knee, or we thought it was really hurt, wasn't as bad as it could have been, but it still made him miss, 10 days. I was not as excited about football for him. I was I was a little low, in that
Yeah.
area. I mean, it didn't cause me to shut down and not work and have a smile on my face, but I noticed a difference.
For
in
sure.
myself.
Anyone with S who sees people that they love suffering, it's a
Yeah.
real it's a real killer. It kind of just you go there with them.
well, the more important whatever it is, the more likely and the more fear you're going to feel.
Right.
The point is this. Here's the summary, guys. The point is that if fear is not here to push us into control, into dread, into
Anxiety.
lock it down, to isolation, to denial, to making judgments, to
Addictions.
to raging, that is all the impairment side. What it is the light that goes off that says, okay,
Reach
slow
up.
down. What am I afraid of? Is this real? Because if it's a bear, it's real. You better hook them, right? You better get out of there.
Or reach up or reach out.
Okay, but it is, I feel fearful. What exactly am I fearful? What is that exposing about my neediness and my lack? What do I need to understand about this? Who do I need to reach out to? And at the end of the day, it is supposed to drive us ultimately vertically, because we can get a lot of help. God's given us a lot of help horizontally. Okay. But the real help is vertically. And when we go into anxiety and all these other things I just said, that makes us go horizontal, and we become the control factor. And the problem with trying to control everything is you can't control everything.
Mhm. Yeah, I spent many years of my life trying to control some things that were out of my control, and so when you finally come to terms with you can't control it, you start making better decisions.
Yeah.
And when you realize that hurt isn't the end,
Right.
that if I get hurt, my story's not over. But people who got hurt early on and have some deep woundedness, they just go, I got hurt. I got really wounded. You know why? Because I was vulnerable. And I was vulnerable because I couldn't control everything.
It
So you know
becomes a
what?
formula.
I am now going to control everything around me. And I promise you, I won't get hurt again. And you'll see these people, they have a lot of rage. They're going off about everything because they're trying to control the world, and the world's pushing back and go, you can't control me. And that's not good enough for them. So judgments come out, the rage comes out, and it's just not a way to live. That's just not the way to live. So the better way to live is to move your fear into faith and wisdom, reach out, be vulnerable, reach out to others, talk about your neediness. Let's gain wisdom. Let's gain preparation. And you know what? Let's go out and attack the world knowing we could get hurt. But that's okay. It's not the end.
That's perfect, Darren. I tell you what, speaking of fear and anxiety, moving can be stressful. Moving can cause fear because you've got strangers coming into your home and moving your prized possessions. And so we've got a solution for you. That solution is delicate moving. With our commitment to only hiring qualified, highly trained, and skilled movers, you can count on Delicate Moving to provide you with a 5-star moving experience. Only need a few pieces moved? No problem. Delicate Moving has competitive and affordable pricing for those small moves. It's this time of year as we get close to the holidays where people need to move furniture out of their living room to get ready for their Christmas tree, or they've got family coming in for extended stay and they need to move some of the furniture into the garage or into storage. Delicate Moving can handle that. Building a house, I know a lot of people right now that are waiting on their house to be built. They need storage for their furniture. We'll contact Delicate Moving. We have our own storage facility that is secure and safe for your possessions. You'll have peace of mind when Delicate Moving picks up your shipment that it will be safely stored and delivered in the same condition when your home is ready. Give us a call, 214-972-0502. And we thank everyone for tuning in today. I think in wrapping up, like Darren said, is let's not be here, and let's move forward in a positive way and move in that giftedness of faith and wisdom. Thanks, Darren and April. A great show today. Appreciate what you guys brought today. Have a good one.
Awesome. Bye, guys.
Thanks.